my name is Gustavo Ribeiro. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Report, and welcome to LATAM This Week, which is part of our uh, weekly videos on YouTube by the Brazilian Report. This week, once again, I'm joined by Lucas Berti. He is our Latin America correspondent and one of the writers of the Latin America weekly newsletter, which comes every Wednesday. Hi, Lucas, how are you?
Hello, Gustavo.
Before we get started, I would like to ask for people watching this video to go to brazilian.report/subscribe and subscribe to our content. We are an independent media outlet that our business model is totally based on subscriptions. So if you want to help independent journalism, brazilian.report/subscribe. And our plan started just $3.90. That is much cheaper and much healthier than getting a Big Mac on McDonald's. So let's go to what we're here for, which is to talk with Lucas about what is going on in Mexico. Lucas, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or as we call him, AMLO, he has faced two important votes over the past couple of weeks, right? And the results have not quite been what he was expecting. What happened?
Yes, we can say that. A week and a half, Mexico held a recall referendum on Amlo, which he proposed himself. The president enjoys a massive popularity of almost 60% and hoped that a massive score would give him political muscle to push for his agenda. And at 80%, turnout was higher than expected, but remained way below the required 40% threshold to make the referendum result binding. Among those who did show up to the polls, almost 92% voted for AMLO to stay in office until his term runs out in 2024. A win, but not quite the win he was hoping for. Still, the victory allows the president to portray himself as being a near unanimity among Mexican voters.
Yes, and like you said, just 18% of turnout. It's because the opposition boycotted the vote, but the opposition could have tried to pressure AMLO and try to make him make a run for his money. And what about his recent loss? Just a couple of days ago, Congress voted on a very important reform bill that he proposed, and it didn't go the way he was planning.
Yeah, right. So AMLO was proposing a radical energy reform which would have granted CFA, a state electricity group, 54% of the market from the current 38%. But he failed to get the reform passed in Congress. The government whipped only 275 out of the 332 votes required. AMLO called the result as an act of treason by Congress.
And I mean, these are strong words. Why was he so pissed? I mean, why did he fail to get his reform over the hump?
Well, the reform was opposed by multiple sides. It spooked the private sector, opposition, and the US government. Critics argued that it was a bad for investment, the economy, and environment. Opponents are fearful of the creation of a state run energy monopoly, and the law appears to prioritize fossil fuels and stunt the growth of renewables, something that private companies have largely driven. This also potentially threatens Mexico's climate commitments.
And I mean, if nobody seemed to back this reform except AMLO himself, why did he push for it? Why was that reform so important for him?
Well, AMLO has said that Mexico's oil does not belong to the government nor the state, but to the people. He has been called a resource nationalist in the shape of former populist leaders such as Lázaro Cárdenas and Adolfo López Mateos, who nationalized state energy company Pemex in the 1930s, expropriating Shell. For AMLO, Mexico's current practice of importing its own oil and having been refined overseas is like selling oranges to buy orange juice later.
And I mean, it's not that far away from the kind of debates we're seeing here in Brazil about, for instance, Lula, who said that it's preposterous that Petrobras, our state controlled oil and gas giant company has its prices pegged to international oil fares because the Brazilian taxpayer will pay for gas at the pump in reais, so the prices should be controlled in reais. It's not exactly the same argument, but it's not that far, right?
Yeah.
And so before we continue, once again, I'd like to make a quick shout out to our viewers. Please go to the Brazilian Report and subscribe to our content. And if you're already a subscriber, you can go to Buy Me a Coffee and actually offer a cup of coffee to one of our staff members. And Buy Me a Coffee now has also a sort of membership program. And you can offer from between 1 to 5 coffees to our staff every month. And that would get you some exclusive benefits like special newsletters, behind the scenes content. I mean, you get to see how the sausage is done at the Brazilian Report, the ability to ask questions directly to us if you think maybe there's something that it interests you and we're not specifically covering that subject, so you will be able to pose us questions directly. And also, you can get a shout out on our podcast, Explaining Brazil, which comes every Wednesday. We were talking about the climate implications of the reform, the fact that many environmentalist organizations called out Amlo for his proposal. Why is that?
Well, critics say AMLO's reform would bring about negative environment consequences, greater pollution, and burden the state with the costs. Greenpeace, for example, says there are many contradictions about what is considered a clean source, allowing for a lot of discretion by the government. Under the proposed model, the carbon dioxide emissions emitted by Mexico's energy sector would hit by 1 billion tons by 2050, more than double the projected under existing laws, according to a study carried out by the German Institute for Economic Research. There is also the risk of affecting companies feeling million-dollar international arbitrations as a result of the policy change.
So, I mean, the reform didn't pass. That means that investors, the US government, and environmentalists are happy.
Well, the result of the energy reform vote will be welcomed by most investors, but analysts expect political and regulatory uncertainty in the sector to continue.
And what is AMLO planning to do next to spark that uncertainty around regulations and around how politicians may interfere with Mexico's energy sector?
Well, that's a great question. Some analysts say the government simply wanted to portray the opposition as representing the interests of foreign energy companies, while it was working for the Mexican people. But AMLO is now promising to propose the nationalization of Mexican lithium.
And what is that exactly?
It is AMLO's third option for the energy sector. The first was to recover Pemex and make it a global powerhouse. The second was the reform Congress just rejected. And the third is to nationalize lithium. That's a bit misleading because lithium, like all other minerals and metals in the Mexican subsoil, have belonged to the state since the 1917 Constitution. What it's really about is trying to achieve something, like anything, in this case by reforming the mining law. But this new plan is now creating anything of real value. It's talking about creating a new state enterprise, but the track record of those is not stellar.
And it's not as if Mexico didn't already have many economic challenges to like it's not that AMLO didn't have enough on his plate economically speaking.
Exactly. Mexico's GDP dropped by 8.5% in 2020, pushing unemployment and inequality figures. In 2021, it already had signs of some recovery, increasing by almost 5%. But though some indicators recovered pre-pandemic levels, economists still say that there is still a long way to go until solving all the economic problems in Mexico. Since the referendum did not take him out, AMLO still has the chance to pass the stick in better conditions than he received. And according to the president himself, this is his last chance. He promised to step out completely from political activity in 2024, and at least the promises he usually keeps.
Right. We're going to see that. I mean, it's Latin American presidents who leave office very popular, they're quite tempted to try to make a return. We have seen that in multiple countries. But Lucas, thank you very much. And for people who are interested in AMLO's proposal for lithium, about what led his energy reform proposal to sink in Congress, Lucas is expanding on on these issues for our Latin America weekly newsletter, which once again is out every Wednesday. Lucas, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Gustavo. Let's see what happens in Latin America this year.
Yes, now we're going to follow very closely. And once again, please subscribe to the Brazilian Report. It's your subscriptions that fuel our journalism, which is independent. And we try to cover Brazil and Latin America in different aspects of this very complex region, trying to get a local point of view in English. Go to brazilian.report/subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, go to buymeacoffee.com/Brazilian Report and support our staff with a cup of coffee because God knows journalists need those very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot and see you next week.